Hi, it's Bill Plack here, 303 Endurance Radio, and we're sitting in the garage with Lance Panigutti today.
How's it going, guys?
So we wanted to get together at a certified socially distant 6 feet, talk about life a little bit, and kind of regroup after almost just a month ago exactly. We were together with the Boulder Tri Club up at base home headquarters, talking about the future of events, and you were on a panel with Dave Kristen and Josh and spacing out the other gentleman who was the director, talking about races coming up and what you guys were going to do for what's going on in the world. And here we are 30 days later, and it's a completely different scene. Talk about it from your point of view, the last 30 days.
I was going to say completely different scene. It's a completely different world since that meeting. I mean, since that time frame, it was, the first week of March that we had that BTC, Boulder Triathlon Club Social.
Yep.
It felt like some of the biggest cancellations happening at that point were in Europe. I mean, Dave Christian from Ironman was talking about a lot of the cancellations potentially coming from Ironman, but there was nothing set in stone yet. We were still dealing with a lot of our municipalities, City of Louisville, Boulder County, because we had our road cycling season coming up. We have 4 races in March, April, and May. And at that point, everything was full engines moving forward. Everything was on track. And then in the span of 48 hours, it was March 13th, got a call from the City of Louisville. They said, you know what? Your criterium for next week is still good to go. It's an outdoor event. The way criterium cycling races work, you cycle through athletes, about 100, 150 at the venue at a time. No big deal. Health department, Boulder County, not really looking at events of that scope. 24 hours later, one more phone call. I saw the phone ring and went, not going to have this event. And in the 72 hours following that, it felt like events, schools, everything started closing like dominoes. And in terms of the event world, everything was turned upside down. And the amount of race directors that started calling, and they had events in May, June, some had events in April, said, what are you doing? What are you doing? And the consensus answer was, we don't know. And in the following 2 weeks since then, kind of leading up to the timeline to where we are today, it felt like every product or service I've ever bought something from has sent an email. And not just an email, it's like a newsletter dissertation.
Right.
It feels like on how to wash your hands. And that's great. It feels like everyone feels the need to do something. They feel the need to put something out. But, I mean, you tell me, I don't need to hear from Blockbuster how they're washing down VHS tapes or what Radio Shack is doing to keep their shelves clean. So it felt like a little bit of overkill, and the whole time I was drafting newsletters to send out to the Without Limits community, but the amount of emails and newsletters that kept coming in from all these different companies, every time I said, you know what, it's just going to get lost in the shuffle. And to get the content out there that I wanted to, it's going to be too long. No one's going to read this. People right now have the attention span of a paragraph that big. And after that, it's going to get lost. So I waited a little bit. I waited a week. I rewrote it. It felt like a week later, we were living in a new world. And then 2 days later, I was like, you know what? I'm going to sit on this newsletter. It has exactly what I want to say. It has all the options in terms of triathlon season, road season, what's going to happen. I waited 2 more days, and then boom. All of a sudden, City of Denver was under quarantine. Colorado State, a day later, was under quarantine. I was like, well, that whole newsletter is irrelevant.
Great. Yeah.
Great exercise in writing. Let's throw that one away. And I started to draft a third one. And at that point, I said, you know what? There's no point. Let me sit down with Bill, talk through the situation, talk through all the options, and just put something out to our community that they're going to actually take the time to watch, because I can't read another newsletter. I can't read another email about washing my hands. I know how to wash my hands at this point. Not knocking those newsletters, but it's like there's time for new content.
Right. Well, I appreciate you thinking of us to talk to us. And I mean, we've had the same issue, right? I get a news release, this is canceled. I just about ready to write an article, and it was like irrelevant in 2 seconds. So I've just been sort of sitting idle to even talk about events coming up with you or anybody else, because it just seems like it's a moving target that you can't keep up with. So where are you at with your own events right now?
I mean, the way our calendar is set up, so we start in the fall or the springtime with road cycling season. So March, April, and May, we have 4 road cycling races, and then we transition obviously into triathlon season. And then triathlon season transitions in the fall time to cyclocross season. So road season's the first one we want to talk about. We have 1 race left. The other 3 races have pretty much gone up in smoke, and we saw it coming. When City of Louisville called me, it wasn't just City of Louisville saying, you know what, we're suspending all event permits for the time being for the next 4 weeks, which later became 8 weeks. It was Boulder County, then it was USA Cycling. So the cancellations and the suspension of permits was literally coming from all different angles.
So you didn't postpone those at all?
We didn't. I mean, we kept in contact with Boulder County, with all those permitting agencies, because our mindset was we want to put on a safe and responsible event, but we want to do it in the guidelines of what the counties are comfortable with, what the health departments are comfortable with. And every day they're getting different guidance from the national organizations, from the World Health Organization. So it's such a fast changing and fluid situation. We have to be ready on a moment's notice to say, you know what, Thursday the event's on, Friday morning, nope, flip the switch, the event's off, and that has to be okay. As an event director, you want to see things happen, but you want to be ready to get that communication out there should it not happen. And the nice part is with our road cycling races, they're all local. No one's flying in, no one's driving in from out of state. So the amount of people who are ready to race, have it on their calendar, they're understanding if we have to make that call on a Friday night for a Saturday race. They're going to understand, they're going to go, you know what, that was a bummer, take the bike off the car, go for a bike ride instead. But there's a lot of acceptance, even though there's a lot of unknown, there's a lot of frustration in the community, there's still a lot of acceptance and a lot more patience in this situation than we've ever seen before.
Well, I think that's where, a cycling race differs so much from a triathlon. And even in a normal season, cyclists wait till the last minute to sign up, as you well know, based on the weather, whatever. So they can pretty well respond to this, I'm sure. But talk about triathlon, then. That's kind of your next segment. And you still have those on the calendar, technically, I'm sure, because you got Colorado Triathlon starting the 1st of June. Where are you at with that planning, and is it ready to go in a moment's notice if it happens?
I mean, today's March 31st. So our first triathlon on the calendar is the Colorado Triathlon, scheduled for June 6th. And there's been a handful of emails. By and large, our email hasn't been flooded like I thought it would be. So bless your hearts. Thank you for not filling our inbox right now. In the emails that have come in, there's been some of the angry, I want a refund, I can't believe you haven't canceled this email. We know those are going to happen. I wait for those and go, here we go, one of those. But then there's been a lot of really supportive emails. There's even been emails that say, you know what, I'm not asking for a refund. I'm not asking for what's happening with this race. I just want to say thank you and know that we're supporting you no matter what you decide. I mean, I can't tell you how far those emails go to brighten your day when you've been on the phone with different permitting agencies and governing bodies going through plan B, C, D, and E, hoping you never have to use them. And the whole time you're coming up with these contingency plans for a race like Colorado Tri, you're coming up with the same plans for Xterra Lori, for Tri Bella, because once one race stops and you have to postpone, chances are you're a week away from having to postpone another one. And what's the policy going to be for that one? So right now, all the planning we're doing is everything's going to happen as scheduled. And then we have plans B, C, D, E, I mean, you name it, for if Boulder County extends their suspension of event permits to mid-June. What does that look like? What race does that affect? What do we do with Colorado Tri? Pretty much the easy answer right now, in being the most honest with our athletes and our community, is all options are on the table, but I honestly don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what we're going to do if we are forced to either cancel or postpone, because every week it feels like every day feels like we wake up, we turn on the news, and there's a new reality out there. There's a new situation that, in terms of the event world, that we're having to deal with. And it's not just, do we have to cancel or postpone the race? Dealing with the city of Boulder, right now, all events in between May 15th and June 15th are going to happen as scheduled, unless things deteriorate and the situation grows worse. But the city is looking for every event to put together a package of what they're going to do to help maintain the protocols and the social distancing at those events. So not only right now am I looking at Colorado Tri and saying, all right, if we're able to hold this race as scheduled, I have to plan for a normal event, but it's what kind of practices are we going to in place to distance people, to lessen the potential impact of a group environment?
I was just, that was my next question, actually, because this isn't going to just turn off. We're going to have to adhere to some sort of protocols to make it as safe as possible, but we're going to let, hopefully, things trickle back to some normalcy. What are your first thoughts about how you would approach a race when it becomes your decision to have a race? When the city says, we're okay if you do it based on this criteria, or the county, or USA Cycling or USA Triathlon, and it now becomes your decision. What will you do at first glance to make your races maybe different, and what will stick as a permanent thing, you think?
I mean, the nice part is we have time. We have 2 months to deal with this. And since we started putting on events, I mean, we've had disasters before. And every situation's been a little bit different. I don't know if you remember Summer Open. It was 2012, about 6-7 years ago. This huge storm kicked up 5 minutes before the swim. The water went from complete glass to literally 2 to 3 foot white capping waves at the furthest buoy. And I looked around and I saw everyone was terrified. Like literally, I was looking at people that I knew were good swimmers going, wow, they're really, really scared right now. And I got on the microphone and said, you know what? Who doesn't want to swim? All these hands went up. And I said, you know what? Who wants to swim to the first buoy? Another set of hands went up. So in 5 minutes, we created options, and people were flexible with all those options because they're like, you know what? This is the safest situation for me to basically get through this swim or not swim at all and still have an endurance multi-sport experience. And that's what we're looking at. We have 2 months before Colorado Tri. So if we're able to hold the event, do we make the transition area so big, put every bike rack we possibly own out there? So you know what? You don't have to be right next to someone. You got 3 feet, 4 feet of space in between that person next to you. When you cross the finish line, instead of waiting for everyone to get off the bike course, we're looking at creating another exit entrance in a transition that's just for people who finished to basically grab their gear and go home. I mean, if you don't want to wait around, if you're not comfortable being in that large group environment, you shouldn't have to be. But you still want to compete. You still want to participate. So you participate, finish, grab your medal, grab some food, go get your bike and go home.
Okay, well, that sounds like already given a lot of thought. What other things have kind of come in your head that might be totally different that are new for you guys?
I mean, the biggest thing, I've fought it for years. I like head-to-head competition. I like swim wave starts, kind of being right next to someone, even if you're a beginner, elbow to elbow. But obviously, elbow to elbow isn't exactly super kosher right now. So we're looking at a time trial start. So basically, instead of 50 people, 80 people down in a swim wave together, waiting for that gun to go off in the water, we line you up on the beach, keep your distance. It's 1 through however many people we have in the race. We create a snake system on the beach, and boom, every 5 seconds. Like Ironman, I mean, they've done that. Other races have done that. It works well. It's not my preferred starting method, but right now, all options are on the table.
So that'll obviously, you have to talk to the cities and let them know that, hey, I might need the roads an extra hour or whatever the case may be. So I kind of feel like this kind of thing brings out changes that sometimes are good. You know, in the way we do business, we transact, the delivery service, whatever you want to trickle this down to. Do you see a scenario where maybe there's events are changed forever, that maybe there's some good things that come out of this?
I think I'm an optimist. I've always been an optimist. Right. And even though our event world and the world as a whole is upside down right now, I think a lot of benefits are going to come out of this. I don't know exactly what those benefits are. I can't wait to give everyone a hug when this is all said and over. Right. I might just station myself at the finish line, forget the slip and slide, just big hugging station for everyone, because I think the world is going to need to connect. They're going to have to get back to that face-to-face interaction and remember what it's like as a society that we're all in this together. Yeah. And I've never thought there was a more important time once things settle down and once the world has healed for special events.
Well, speaking of that, how's the Without Limits family? Because you guys kind of are a family. You have a crew, and you have part-time help. You got some full-time help. You've got all the vendors that come together at these events. What's that environment like for you right now as the owner?
It's funny. You find out very quickly. Like, I know my staff very well, the A-team. You find out, though, who's an introvert, who's an extreme extrovert. Because right now there's so much anxiety and so much boredom with the extroverts because they were counting on road season. I mean, after cyclocross season, they can't wait to get back out there. And for me, I'm actually more of an introverted person. So I've just been at the warehouse spring cleaning everything, building new things, rearranging things. I mean, because the planning has to move forward. And people like Olympia, our volunteer director, she's still planning, answering emails, putting out volunteer requests. Because I think a lot of people right now, it's almost like they're on pause. Even though they're working from home or they're still going to an office, it almost feels like the world is on pause.
Yeah, totally. I mean, my world, like we were talking about earlier, I don't know what content is going to be relative. I'm just sort of laying low a little bit and trying to my revenue stream is completely changed. I'm sure yours is going to change a little bit.
But say we hit April 30th and all of a sudden the world is healing, things are on the mend. That only gives us 35 days to get ready for Colorado Tri? We can't sit here as event planners and take a time out. We have to keep planning as if our event was going to happen as scheduled, but also keep planning. I mean, it's almost more work right now, but you have to keep planning for all those contingencies of, are you going to postpone? Are you going to cancel? And we've postponed events before. It is a nightmare to postpone an event. I mean, is it possible? Yes.
Yeah, talk about that. Talk about the logistics of, as a race director. I mean, you have a timeline in your head that always works to getting your races ready. Now that's being compromised, not sure, whatever. Talk about some of the elements of putting on a race and what can proceed at normal speed right now, waiting, planning, permitting, arranging for these vendors, arranging for whatever, to what you have to wait till the last minute to make happen.
I mean, one of the benefits that's come out of this in the last 2 weeks is so many event directors in multiple different industries, running, cycling, outside the endurance industry, music, you name it, have started calling each other, getting to know each other because they want to know what's going on in those industries, how people are planning, how people are handling those postponements. And we've postponed about 4 events in the past. We've had forest fires burn out all the bridges at Xterra Lori. We've had tropical storms for our races on the East Coast. I mean, you name it, we've seen it at a micro level, definitely not something this huge and impactful. But every time you postpone something, you're taking basically a year of planning time to execute something that's already pretty challenging, and now saying we're going to plan what we did in a year in 3 months. And I think the challenge a lot of people are going to have, and not saying it's impossible, is the amount of resources, medical, police, timing companies. I mean, just getting shipments over from China right now in terms of finisher metals. I mean, things like that are so much more complicated because there's only so many resources to go around. So now all of a sudden we have a year's worth of events that we're going to try to pack into 6 months. And I think a lot of these, and I'm not trying to be negative when I say this, I think a lot of the events that we've seen either postponed to September and October, like September, if I was an athlete, it's great. You got like 10 different choices every single day to do something cool and exciting. But there's only so many resources to go around. And that's what we're looking at now. If we had to postpone Colorado Tri, does it make sense to do it in September? Yeah. Is that even a viable option with Oktoberfest and Harvest Moon?
Or do you turn Harvest Moon into a completely everything from a sprint to a long course?
And then financially, I mean, we talked about it at that Boulder Triathlon Club meeting. A lot of athletes don't realize that you start getting the registration money in, but before the event happens, most of the registration money is already prepaid. I mean, this February, the irony of it, I was so on top of things. I got all our orders in. Because as soon as it was the Chinese factory started to shut down, it was the end of January, early February. And when I saw that happen, I said, you know what? Time to crank up the artwork, get our pre-orders in, because if they're backed up a month or two, we're not going to start getting things till early May, mid-May. It's cutting it really close. So I got all our pre-orders in. Bags, pint glasses, awards, finisher medals, huge checks flying out the door. End of February hit, I was like, sweet, we're in a really good position. I've never been so far ahead of schedule. Then the first week of May hit, or March hit. It was like, well, so much for pre-planning.
So now do you have a warehouse full of glasses and medals? And
Inbound,
yeah.
Yep, they're on their way. And I mean, it's tough because we've had, since the beginning of March, 8 registrations come in total for all the events. And those 8 people, I almost want to call them and give them like the Optimist of the Year award and thank them. Because that's 8 more than I thought would come in, given the situation. I mean, I've had people call and email and say, you know what? What's your cancellation policy? And when I tell them, right now it's a no cancellation policy, it's always been that. And anytime we've ever had to cancel or postpone, I'd like to think we've gone above and beyond in terms of giving credits, but I don't know what's going to happen. And that's the first time in 13 years that I can honestly say, I don't know if we're going to have to strictly enforce that cancellation policy or not. So I told those athletes, I was like, you know what? As an athlete myself, don't register. Wait. As a race director, I would love you to register. But as an athlete and as an athlete-driven company, I can't in good conscience tell that person to register not knowing what's going to happen?
Yeah. Yeah, I got a couple of emails from, I won't name them, but a couple of event companies that were wanting me to put out that they've extended their discount program, early bird discount sort of thing for their races. And I thought, really? Because these are canceling. Why even? Let's just wait and see what happens here. I don't feel like that's really news at this point.
No, and for us, I mean, last year was a great year. We sold out every triathlon. I mean, a lot of athletes, they see a sold out race and they have to recognize that races operate on such a small margin that sometimes you break even when you're at 90% capacity. Sometimes you break even when you're at 80% capacity.
Yeah. No, that's tricky. Well, let's switch gears just a little bit. You probably were getting your stuff together really well earlier so you could do your trip to Thailand, right? But we don't need to talk about Thailand because I was there too, and I think that was great. But I want to talk about what you learned in Thailand and how that was going to impact, or hopefully will impact, your races coming up.
I mean, Thailand was definitely a catalyst for a lot of the eco initiatives that we brought about this year. My wife and I were on this super remote beach called Koh Kraden, and no roads. 500 people sleep on the island a night. You have to jump off the boat into the water because there's no dock. And there we are on the most remote place we've ever been in the world, most remote beach on the other side of the island that you have to hike to. And I'm sitting there at sunset and literally turn around and there's plastic bottles, single-use plastic bottles washing ashore. So there's got to be a better way.
Yeah.
There just has to be. And then that coupled with a music festival down in Costa Rica that we go to every year called Envision. They have a system where you go in for $3 or their version of colones. You basically get a hard cup or a hard plate. And then when you're done with your hard cup, you bring it back to a wash station. You either get a new cup or you get a token that you can bring back to the bars. So it's a system of 1 cup in, 1 cup out. Oh. And that's 7,000 people. None of our events are 5,000 to 7,000 people. And while that might not work when someone sprints across the finish line, we're not going to hand them a hard plastic cup. But it just got me thinking when I got back from that trip, there has to be other solutions.
Yeah, and talk about those, because I think you were talking about even different toilet paper and different kinds of ways to have water dispensed. And what were your, your plans?
When I look at sustainability, it's not just one thing. I didn't want to bite off more than we can chew. So this year we started with what I call 4 pillars. The most important pillar to me was getting rid of single-use plastic. I mean, every single race we're going to Costco and buying basically a pallet's worth of single-use plastic. And after the race, I'm bringing that to the recycling plant. And when you watch some of the true documentaries on the live stream of cycling, it is sad. It never actually gets recycled. And that's coming from an optimistic place of, yeah, we do our part, we bring all the recycling in, but maybe 10% of that is actually getting reused and repackaged as recycled items.
Wow.
Maybe 10%.
Wow.
So we partnered with a company called Just Water. So they source their plastic from plant-based sources. It's a combination of plant-based sources and wood from renewable forests. It's a combination of the two. And it was more expensive, but for me, it's not just about profit. I mean, when we started this company, it wasn't just about putting on races. It was about creating a lifestyle for people that was based on being healthy and active. To me, that was the most important thing. And part of that feeds into that healthy and active lifestyle is obviously nutrition, but it's also about living a sustainable life and leaving a smaller footprint than we found it when we go to events.
So you're obviously taking that to heart. And so what's your other pillars? You mentioned you had 4.
The next one is toilet paper.
Oh, okay.
The irony of the toilet paper divide. So before all this started, we put in an order for bamboo-based toilet paper. A company called Nature Ease. So they make bamboo, and they also have hemp toilet paper. Okay. And we went with the bamboo, super renewable source. And it was ironic because ordered the toilet paper, prepaid for it. They were delivering it end of March before our first cycling race. And when they finally delivered it, I mean, this is after stores started restocking, but the delivery driver showed up to my house because our warehouse doesn't accept deliveries. And he's like, well, I need you to sign for it, and I have to call this in to let the company know that the toilet paper came. And better than that, we have a pallet of toilet paper sitting in my driveway. And this is right when the quarantine started too. So all the neighbors are out walking, and my wife's like, you need to get this out of here. We're going to be those people right now and get raided. So I was throwing the toilet paper. I felt like bricks of cocaine in the back of my truck, zipping it up to the warehouse to unload under like the cover of night.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
So that was the second pillar.
Okay.
Third pillar is trees. I mean, toilet paper right now, every single day, 27,000 trees are cut down just so we can wipe our tissues.
Wow.
So for me, it just wasn't about, all right, bamboo toilet paper, but what about replacing the trees? And replacing the trees in our own backyard. I didn't want to partner with a charity that just planted trees in Nebraska or on the East Coast or somewhere around the world. I wanted to make an impact in our local community. So partnered with a company called One Tree Planet. Every year they rotate through Colorado. So at a minimum, we're going to plant 1,000 trees with them. So, I mean, this is our backyard. This is where we ride, we run. We've been impacted by forest fires. Geez, how many in the last 10 years? We've had to postpone races because of forest fires. So to me, if I had to rank the pillars, I can't really rank one more important than the other.
That's cool. So when you say we, does that mean you're the people who work without limits? Go. That's a great thing for our whole community to do. Talk about good social distancing.
And it's fun too. I mean, I've seen other events do it, and then people who actually planted the trees will go back or get pictures of, hey, that's my tree. Look at how it's doing.
Right.
Look at how it's growing.
I like it. I like it.
And then the fourth and the last pillar, to me, we met an amazing guy when we were in Cambodia. He was literally just telling us his story, and he was so excited. He learned English from an NGO there, and he was starting in his local village an English school. And he was literally building it out of bamboo. He said, you know what? I just want to teach my villagers English because that's how I made a better life for myself. So for me, seeing that firsthand, because so many times, so many charities you donate to and they promise the world and how they're going to make an impact, but the money never actually makes it to the community. So many nonprofits, there's some amazing ones out there, and there's a lot of nonprofits where the money you donate is paying a salary. And I never wanted just to pay someone's salary, hoping 2% of the dollars I gave made an impact. So we said we kept in touch with the guy. We never promised him anything. He never asked for anything, which was the best part. But when we got back to America, we kept in touch and said, you know what, let's finish your school for you.
Oh, wow.
So we started donating. He has walls now. He has a floor. The roof is up, and he keeps sending us pictures and video. Obviously, things have stalled because of the current situation. But pretty soon, he's going to be teaching English.
Wow, that's awesome. That's pretty impactful. I like it. So what, you start to see a lot of virtual races happening. Racing Underground is going to do something now. What do you have plans like that for, if we don't have events for a while? Do you have any contingency plans like that?
Right now, I love what Racing Underground is doing. They've always been a family to us. They time all our races. So we're actually supporting them, trying to push people to their platform. We actually just donated a couple race entries because instead of awards, they can't really mail out virtual awards. They're doing prizes.
I saw that. So
they're calling their sponsors, so we're giving entries.
Okay.
So if people are looking for that virtual race right now, we highly recommend you go to Racing Underground.
All right. Well, virtual races, there's probably any number of things that can get people outside. And it doesn't seem like there's any trouble getting people outside right now based on the amount of bikes and traffic. And I was just talking to the bike shop up around the corner. His sales are up 200% for this month.
Wow.
Because not so much sales, but service. Because a lot of people are bringing their bikes out of the garage and just getting in and being active. And so who knows what's going to happen in the events, but no doubt people are going to be out and moving and having fun. So from your perspective, what are maybe just a final thought to share with our audience today about?
Yeah, I mean, for those people that are worried and wondering what's going to happen come June, my best advice is stay patient. I mean, we're having those conversations every couple days with the permitting agencies, with the towns. We're coming up with every plan under the sun. We will do our best to hold the race in a safe and responsible manner. If we do have to cancel, if we do have to postpone, we will find a way to make sure that Without Limits as a company stays solvent and that we can keep putting on races in 2021. No one wants to see any local company, local event, anyone go bankrupt, but we're going to do our best too to help out the athlete. We know there's a lot of people hurting out there. We know there's a lot of people affected in so many different ways. And it's easy to look at events and say, oh, it's just an event. What's that really matter right now? And it might not matter right now, but it's going to matter at some point. I mean, when this is all said and done, we as a society need to find a way to come together again, to heal again, and to basically look at life and say, you know what? It's never going to be the same, and that's okay. That can be a good thing. Yeah. That we can look at our systems and look at what got us in this situation and find a way to elevate and move beyond that, to create new systems, to create new ways of looking at events. And take this opportunity, take the 2 months to connect with people in ways we've never connected before. It doesn't have to be that physical connection. It can be that Zoom connection of going through social media and saying, you know what, haven't talked to this person or that person in years.
Right. Oh, I find myself doing that all the time already with
And then
happy hours and trivia questions. And
then my other piece of advice would be stay off the news, stay off social media, don't make it political right now. Find a way to find something positive every single day that you can reflect on and grow from.
Well, that's good advice. I think that we'll wrap this up with that. And thanks for coming out, Lance.
No, thanks for having me.
And thanks, Kenny. You can't see Kenny filming this, but it's our friend Kenny Withrow back there behind the lens. And we maintain our 6 feet, and beautiful day.
Yeah.
All right, let's have fun.